So, good evening, everybody, and welcome. It's really nice to see you all here. Many familiar faces and a couple of new ones too. Yeah, we had a feeling like the mindfulness topic was an interesting one. A lot of people seem to have some curiosity about that. So I'm glad we get to do it tonight or today, if it's your morning. Since in December I was I was a little under the weather with some of those winter bugs. So we'll just wait, another minute or so, let some people arrive who are still coming. I was noticing that, yeah, we've been doing these for nearly, not quite a year and a half. There's about something like, I don't know, 15 or 16 sessions. So that was somehow a surprise to see. Been going for a while, so that's nice. Kind of happy to see people showing up and being interested in inquiry. So yeah, very nice. So tonight, well, before we start, a couple of the usual introductory things, because there are some new folks here. So welcome if it's your first time here. Dive In is it's a forum for inquiry. It's a space to discover, to talk about the nuts and bolts and the ins and outs of this fascinating practice of inquiry. And inquiry is, of course, one way of approaching and working with your inner world, right? Your inner world, the world of your consciousness. And tonight, we're kind of starting on a whole different tack. For a long time, we've been talking about different aspects of inquiry that are unpacked in my book, Diving in the Inner Ocean. And now we're going to start sort of contrasting inquiry with some of the other ways of approaching our inner world that may be similar in some ways, may be different in some ways, may be complementary in many ways. And just to kind of draw out some of the similarities and some of the differences. I've had many times the experience of sitting down with people and I tell them a bit about inquiry and I say, this is what I do and what I teach. And maybe they do mindfulness or they do coaching or they do some kind of therapy and they go, oh, yeah, that sounds exactly like what I do. And I'm sort of sitting there thinking, well, yes, in some ways, yes. In some ways, no. So yeah, we'll get to kind of dig a little into some of those differences and those complementarities. So it's an introductory session. It's a public open forum. Anybody is welcome to come. There's no charge. The sessions are recorded and we tend to make them available on the Dive In website. I must introduce Susan, who's here, who's helping out and doing all sorts of things behind the scenes, and you might have emailed and interacted with her. So yeah, it's recorded. It's a public forum. Remember that. We like to keep whatever we find and whatever we hear in the inquiry exercises, because you're going to have an opportunity to do a little inquiry exercise at some point. And we keep that confidential and that's not recorded. But everything that goes on in this main room is. So you just need to bear that in mind. What else do I need to say by way of intros? I think that's probably good. It's a practical space, right? So we're not just going to talk theoretically. We're actually going to dive in and try things in a real practical way. So we'll begin with a little bit of guided practice, and then I'll do a little bit of a talk, and then we'll give you an opportunity to do some kind of exercise to actually really go and try it out for yourselves. And then we come back and have some discussion and, questions and sharing and comments. And we try to do all this in about 90 minutes. And mostly we manage, and sometimes I run a little over, so especially if there's lots of questions. So we'll aim for the 90 minutes. So let's begin with our guided practice. Right? So we're going to begin, find a comfortable seated position, right? You want to find a position that's good for meditation for you, right? Where you can be probably sitting, you might be lying. I see one person at least lying, but you want to be in such a position that you're upright, your body is alert and awake, but not tense, right? So you can be awake, but relaxed. And take a moment to remember as we begin. So this orientation of friendly interest, right? So you're approaching your inner world. Your inner world is like a whole ocean, the whole ocean of your inner experience, right? And as you approach your inner world, turn towards yourself, I want to remember that we're doing that with a kind of friendly, curious interest, right? So we're approaching ourselves in a way that's welcome and that's friendly and not stumping in there, barging in there, trying to change things or fix them or think that there's anything wrong. Right? So you take a moment to remember that. And then you can let your eyes close, right? Bringing your attention inwards. And start off noticing the sensations of your feet on the ground, right? Sensing the actual sensations of your body as your feet connect with the ground, sensations of your feet themselves. And take a moment to feel your seat, your bum in the chair, on the chair, the support of the chair, and the weight of your body coming down and connecting, supported in the chair. Through your pelvis and your buttocks in contact with the chair. So these very tangible physical sensations give us a little anchor. Now, sense upwards from your seat, sensing your vertebrae, your spine, moving slowly up, sensing the alignment and the bend, the curve of your spine, all the way up towards your neck. And then sensing your head on top of your spine. Let it be at ease, relaxed and alert. Sense over the top, and then sense your face, relaxing your eyes, your jaw. And then sense down into your torso. Perhaps feeling the movement of your ribs, your chest as you breathe, and your belly, the movement of your belly as you breathe. So now, let go of any particular focus. Right? And begin to just notice whatever it is that is there in your consciousness, whatever it is that you're aware of. It's like you've lowered yourself down into your inner world, right? You've lowered yourself down beneath the water. And now you're kind of sitting there and you're looking around to just see what there is to see. Might be a sensation in your body, might be some kind of feeling, might be some kind of thought. sounds around you. So there's no particular thing you're supposed to be aware of or to find. You're just aware and noticing whatever it is that happens to be in your awareness in this moment. Whatever it is you just notice it. You notice it and you let it go. You just let it be there. It's like you're sitting in the water and a fish comes by and you just see, oh, a fish. You let it swim by. Some bubbles come up from the bottom. You just notice, oh, some bubbles. Right. Moment by moment, simply paying attention as best you can to whatever it is that is arising. Whatever happens, you just keep noticing it. Oh, that. Let it go. Let it swim by or stay there, whatever it does. You don't need to try and do anything with it, including with my voice. Just notice, oh, there's voice. So this is a practice of awareness. You're letting yourself simply be aware of what arises in your experience moment by moment. And we're going to sit for a few minutes and just hang out with that. If you find thoughts arising, you don't have to get rid of them. You just notice them. And you try not to put your energy into them. So you don't pursue them or go after them, get involved in them. You just notice them. And if you find that you have got all involved in them and thinking away, then as soon as you notice that, you notice it and let it go. So whatever arises, you're just noticing. Maybe a deep sense of stillness, that might happen. Or it may be a thought or a feeling, that might happen too. You're just open, friendly, allowing. Being aware, being mindful. And now, let that practice end. And so here you are, sitting in your inner world, seeing what's there, right? Without leaving. So don't leave where you are. Stay right there, sitting there in touch with and aware of whatever's been going on. And now I want you to do something slightly different, right? Actually notice what's there. What's here for you right now? If you were going to describe it, like just in your head to yourself or out loud, just describe it. If you're feeling a sense of stillness, you could describe that. If there are thoughts going on, describe those for a moment. If you're having a feeling, describe that. So it's like you're sitting in the ocean, looking at a fish, but instead of just looking at it and letting go, you're actually describing it. Oh, it's like this. It's this kind of a fish. Right? I feel like this. It's a bit like that. See what happens if you get really curious about it. What is this? What is this experience that you're having? Yeah. See if you draw a little closer to it, kind of feel a bit more into it, and see what else you can say about it. Do you know what it is? What can you tell? And notice, how does it affect you as you begin to put it into words, as you begin to articulate and express and talk about what it is that is arising for you? Okay, so let's slowly bring that to a wrap, right? Finish off your sentence or your thought. And when you're ready to, you can sense your arms and legs, right? Come back in touch with your body. Include some listening, the sounds around you. And when you're ready to, open your eyes. So you're sensing and looking and listening. You're here. So in a very tiny little example, right? In that exercise, you can begin to feel a bit the difference. You can feel what's in common and you can feel what's different between the pure practice of awareness or mindfulness and inquiry. So I want to say, I am not a mindfulness teacher, as in, mindfulness TM or any of those sort of formal schools of mindfulness. In the diamond approach, though, we do use mindfulness or awareness meditation, and that I am a teacher of. So yeah, it's really interesting to contrast these things. And I say that because, of course, there are people who are specifically mindfulness teachers, and mindfulness as it's taught is a whole umbrella of different practices. And today we're kind of zooming in specifically on the awareness part of it, right? So the interesting thing about mindfulness, as I see it, in some ways, is like lowering yourself down into that ocean of your inner world, right? So you immerse yourself in there. You can do it with your eyes open or closed, right? And then you are paying attention in a moment by moment way to what is arising in your consciousness, to what is there in your awareness, right? What mindfulness shares, one of the things mindfulness shares with inquiry is this orientation to immediate experience, right? So we're right here, we're in the moment, we're in touch with what's going on right here, right? We are immersing ourselves in the immediacy of our inner world, right? So that's in common, right? We're aware of immediate experience. What's also in common is, as far as we can, we bring an openness to whatever we find, right? So we're open. Mindfulness, they talk a lot about being open and non-judgmental, right? About what happens to arise within your consciousness. So you're allowing whatever it is that shows up within your awareness to be there, right? To show up and to be there, whatever it is. Yeah. You're not trying to push it away or get rid of it or change it or do anything to it. Judge it, especially, right? We want to just be open and friendly and curious, right? That's another word that gets used a lot, curiosity. Like you sit down, you're going to be open and aware of what shows up for you, and you're curious, right? You're sitting there. So it's just like you're sitting there, like on the rock at the bottom of the ocean or floating in the water, and you're just open and curious to see what is it that goes swimming by, right? And you just get to hang out and see, oh, look, that kind of a fish, that kind of a rock, these kind of plants, these kinds of thoughts and feelings and sensations arise in my consciousness, and I'm just aware of them. Right? So this has many profound benefits, right? Firstly, you might begin to become aware of things within your consciousness that you never knew were even there. Right? You might become aware of feelings that you didn't know you had, or thoughts that you didn't know you had. You might become more aware of the immediate sensations of your body, right? Wonderful benefits. And as you practice, you have the possibility of becoming aware of your very awareness and consciousness itself. You might be sitting there and all of a sudden it does go quiet and it becomes very still, and you feel this kind of open, expansive stillness. Right? That can happen. Right? So the mindfulness practice allows us to enter into our inner world and to begin to see what's in the water, what's around, and on occasion to glimpse the very water itself. Right? That's really those are exciting moments, right? When we glimpse the very consciousness itself, the awareness itself. What this does, one of the things that this does, as we become more aware, we begin to notice, we practice more and more, we might become more and more aware of more and more of what's in our inner world. So we start to become aware, not just of the immediate fish and the things at the surface, but we start getting deeper and deeper into our inner world, and we begin to notice the rocks and the crags and the whole coral reef, and some of the deeper creatures start swimming out from the depth. Right? In other words, as we practice our awareness meditation, we may begin to get in touch with deeper parts of our psyche, right? All kinds of elements of our inner workings may begin to float into awareness. And so you might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm just going to sit quietly and, it's going to go quiet. And instead, what happens, as many people find to their dismay after some period of practice, is it starts to get very noisy, right? And there's lots of thinking and ruminating, and your mind is churning away, and start getting busy with it, like rejecting and holding on to this and judging, and all kinds of inner activity can begin to be exposed in the meditation practice. And, if you read in any meditation tradition, they'll tell you that that's what happens, that the awareness practice kicks off a whole journey, right, of becoming more and more aware of what's in your inner world. It's not a linear path to sit down and things go quiet, right? Right. And in those traditions, and certainly in more contemporary times, that's often where they will say things like, I think, for example, in the Thomas Keating in the Christian meditation tradition, so he calls it the unloading of the unconscious, right, with centering prayer. So you meditate, all kind of stuff starts coming up. In your meditation practice itself, you're just aware of it, right? You don't do anything about it. You're just aware of it. Afterwards, you take it to therapy. You take it to journaling. You take it somewhere where you can do something with it because you actually need to work on that material. The pure awareness practice itself does not bring about the transformation of that material, or if it does so very slowly and almost accidentally. So there is a long recognition in these traditions that in addition to the pure practice of awareness itself, we need something else to help us digest and work with the material that we find. Now, this is where inquiry gets so interesting, right? But think of Thomas Keating's recommendation. He said, take it to therapy. And for many people, therapy is kind of like sitting in the glass boat above the water and talking about what you encountered down there, right? What you found in there. Well, this thing came up about my childhood, and maybe it's this, and I had this reaction, and you kind of explore it like that. And now we find where inquiry becomes so profoundly powerful. Because with inquiry, we lower ourselves down into that water. We enter into the immediacy of our inner world, right? And then we don't just watch the fish go by, right? We become aware of them. We see what's there. And then we really ask ourselves, well, what's really important here? What's really drawing me? What do I need to look at? There's like this great, big, huge issue in my face right there, right? This emotional reaction I'm having, or this difficulty, or this beautiful state of stillness that suddenly appeared, right? So whatever it is that's there, we find what's important to us. And instead of just letting that fish swim by, we get curious about it. We get interested in it, and we begin to follow it, right? So we follow it. We see where it is, what it does, where it takes us. Right? What's making it do what it does? So we do that by beginning to articulate the experience, to actually talk about it, to discriminate what's there and express it in words, and then get so curious about it. Like, well, what is it? What is this feeling? Have this funny feeling in my belly. Okay, well, what is it? What's it like? I'm feeling the sense of stillness. Okay, what's the stillness like? Well, it feels like this deep, vast, kind of feels something still and beautiful in my heart and seems to extend out beyond me. And it's amazing kind of still depth. Well, that's interesting, right? You can really explore that. Ooh, and as I begin to explore it and describe it, I suddenly get a little afraid. It feels so big and I suddenly feel so small. Okay, so then you can explore that, right? In the pure practice of meditation, all you'll know is that 1 minute you're sitting there in this wonderful stillness, and 3 days later you're sitting there and you're feeling terrified and you don't know why, right? It's just, well, it's like that's what happened. And it's what happened for me. I meditated for many years before I discovered inquiry, right? But with the inquiry, you actually get to follow the meaningful threads and structures of the experience so that they can open up and reveal what's true, right? So that they really transform and can be integrated. So there was a beautiful, one of my students, who I think is, oh no, she's not here. Right, one of my students recorded a little video talking about inquiry, and she is a mindfulness teacher, right? And she said the thing she loves about inquiry, as a mindfulness teacher, somebody who's a meditator and who really values those moments of a quiet mind, right? Those precious moments in when you're meditating, when it finally really does go quiet, right? She says she really values that. And she said the amazing thing is inquiry always brings her to that. Pure meditation, she sits there and it's like an hour of, most of the time, of a lot of noise, right? And as I was just watching her talk about that video, and we'll be sharing it through the distribution list sometime in future, Susan, bless her, sends me this wonderful quote from Hamid, from his book, The Void, where it talks about exactly this. Right? And what he says is the mindfulness practice, the meditation practice, can expose the ego structures, helps us become aware of them, of our patterns and our inner workings, right? But it's not enough to quiet it. It doesn't stop it. It doesn't penetrate it and transform it. To do that, you need the psychodynamic work. You need the work of bringing up all this material into consciousness so that you can explore it and metabolize it and digest it. And the amazing thing is that when you do that, suddenly the mind goes quiet, right? That inner structure of that little child, or that hole that you're defending against, or that horrible feeling you're trying to get away from, as you inquire into it and explore it and it opens up, suddenly you're not trying to get away from it anymore. The part of you that was having the reaction is not even there anymore. And what's left is the stillness, or the silence, or the space, or just the compassion, or the pure curiosity, the presence with no mind, with no chatter. So inquiry is really an extraordinary practice, because what it does is it brings that immediacy of the mindfulness practice, right? The in-touchness, so that we're not talking academically or theoretically. We are in touch with our experience as it's happening. But we inquire into it and explore it in such a way that it transforms right there as we're doing it, right? And that brings about a kind of transformation that I think is quite unique to the practice, really. Discovery and unfolding of our inner world, revelation of our potentials, contacting with all the, difficult historical parts of us, and an opportunity to bring them to consciousness and work with them. So, as I said in the newsletter, it's an almost paradoxical situation that with mindfulness or with meditation, you sit quietly, and if you're doing it well, a lot of the time what it does is expose noise. And with inquiry, you talk a lot. It's a talking path, right? We talk a lot. And somehow in the process of talking and exploring, it often brings about kind of inner stillness. Not by aiming for it, but through the process of digesting our experience. So we want to give you a little chance to, take it out for a spin and just play with this yourself. There are two different ways of exploring your inner world. And what you're going to do is you'll find yourself in a breakout room with one other person, right? And first of all, we'd like you to take 5 minutes and just say hi, right? Do all of that. and then close your eyes and take 5 minutes and just sit together, right? So you're going to meditate. And in the 5 minutes of meditation, you just want to practice mindfulness, just being mindful of whatever it is that arises in your inner world. So you're not focusing on anything in particular. You're not trying to make any particular thing happening. You're just sitting there and noticing what arises within your inner world. Remember, it's like just like that little diver, you lower yourself down into the world, into your inner world, and then you just notice what goes by. You notice the feeling or a sensation, thought, or a feeling of presence, or a sense of stillness, or the noise out the window. You just notice moment by moment what's happening. You do this for 5 minutes. Then you each will have 5 minutes to do an inquiry. So now you've been sitting, noticing what's in your inner world. Now take 5 minutes to inquire into it, to explore it. Talk about it. Like, what if you're feeling something, describe the feeling, explore the feeling, right? Or whatever happens to be there in your inner world, some sensation in your body, explore it, describe it, talk about it, inquire into it, right? Just be curious and open and find out whatever you can find out about it. So one person has 5 minutes and the other person is just a silent witness. And then you swap on over, right? And the other person has 5 minutes to just explore whatever it is that's coming up for them, whatever's here, right? You're just being simple and honest. You're not having to get anything right. You're not having to say anything for the other person or be entertaining or anything. You're just exploring what's going on for you, right? Just for you. At the end of that, you take another 5 minutes to sit together for another 5 minutes of mindfulness practice, just noticing what's arising in your inner world. And then after that, you'll have a 5-minute discussion. And in your discussion, you just want to discuss, how was it? Like, what did you notice? The meditation versus the inquiry, how did they compare? How was it to do the two? Just see what you find. What are you learning about your inner world and about these practices? So you just have a little 5-minute discussion. So the whole thing will take 10, 20 minutes, plus an extra 5 minutes. It's an unusually long exercise for diving with Dom. We usually do shorter ones, but I really want you to have a chance to explore this. So the whole thing will take, we'll say 20 minutes plus couple of minutes to get into your breakout rooms and say hello. So we'll be back here, say in about 23, 25 minutes, something like that. Okay. So enjoy trying these two approaches out and just see what you find about them. Susan's going to pop you in breakout rooms, and then we'll come back afterwards for some discussion. All righty, welcome back, everybody. So we have some time for some sharing, some questions or comments, or anything you'd like to bring. If you want to share something or ask a question, please raise your electronic hand. So you'll find that under the participants button. There you go. Susan's just put it in the chat, so you'll find it there. Yeah. Let's go. Gail, hi. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, I have a question. I've been doing this. I noticed that when you spoke about it during the mindfulness part, you mentioned feeling our feet on the floor and feeling our butt in the chair. And I have been doing inquiry for about 7 years now, but I just realized listening to you that I never mention these kinds of things when I'm doing inquiry, because I feel like either they're the same every time or that they're not important. Those what I call gross body feelings.
How interesting, Gail. How is it to see that you have that idea?
Well, it makes me curious because I really want to do. I have seen the benefits of doing inquiry, and I'm just seeing this may be a block that I haven't seen before.
That's wonderful. What a wonderful discovery. You're absolutely onto something there. So all of those things that you might think of as gross, it's like it's just my butt on the chair. There's nothing to inquire into there. Well, that's just a whole big fat assumption there, right? So you can go and, start exploring it. Definitely include, and actually there'll be some of the past dive in with DOMs that'd be really good to go and look at, like, because there's one where we particularly talk about the whole sensate layer of experience, but really it's the fundamental ground of inquiry. It's really important. So I think you've just discovered something really wonderful, and it will completely transform your practice to begin to include it.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Sue, go ahead.
I noticed a huge contrast from it, a big difference between the mindfulness part and the inquiry part. I felt somewhat disconnected in the mindfulness part. I did feel like I was more labeling things, maybe not engaging with them.
Yes.
Perhaps I got the balance wrong, because if I just say the contrast with the inquiry, I love that straight away. I feel more vital, more engaged, more open, naturally more open, more curious. It's softer, and there's something about the mindfulness that certainly the way I'm doing it, that feels quite cruel. To look at something and then to not open your heart and give it space and allow it to reveal itself, feel tenderness that it's there, be curious about it. So I'm beginning to wonder now, that raises questions for me about my mindfulness practice rather than the inquiry, because
so you might be onto something.
Maybe it's my mindfulness practice that is
could be. I mean, is mindfulness is that something you practice? Do you have a mindfulness practice?
Well, I do have a meditation group, and we visit. We meet every 2 weeks, actually. But I think it was. Now you're mentioning it, I think it was just in this session. It's something that came up tonight. It's not something that regularly happens every time I go to mindfulness practice.
Very good. So what you're doing, of course, now is right on, which is you notice something interesting in the practice, and then you can inquire into it, right? You can explore it and find out what's going on there. I will say that, I mean, I think in the general mindfulness instructions, like the awareness meditation instructions, there's no, it's not like you have to sort of close your heart to anything. And so that's not the point. The point is, you let it be there. If feelings arise in your heart, or you feel kindness or warmth, then that can happen too, right? So you don't have to limit your experience in any way. You're not actively engaging in the way that you do with inquiry, right? So that's kind of the difference. So I think there is an orientation of being aware and being open and curious and friendly with, whatever shows up. So it's not like you have to be kind of mean to it, right? But you're not kind of going after it in such an active exploratory way as you do with inquiry. You are just letting it be there. Just letting it be there and letting it be there.
I think, thank you. I mean, it's interesting for me to explore that, because I feel at the moment that I just do inquiry and that's it. And because I'm happy doing it, and it seems.
So are you've been doing inquiry for a while. Are you in a group?
Yeah, I'm in the Diamond group.
Okay. And so you have a meditation practice, right? Yeah. You must be doing some or other meditation practice. Yeah, okay. So as long as you've got, so one of the things that people, actually it was in this little video of the student of mine that I was telling you about earlier, she also says she comes at some point, she recognizes, well, really what we need is diamond approach and meditation, right? The two together. And what I want to say to that is what we need is inquiry and meditation. And the diamond approach includes both, right? If you are doing the diamond approach, if you're in a group, you know, your group will have a meditation practice, and you'll be part of what's required is to do a daily meditation practice, right? So the meditation is really important. We're not saying inquiry is better or instead of meditation. You need meditation, right? But inquiry is still our primary path. And of course, the two together are magic. Yeah. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And Tim, go ahead.
I'm fairly new to inquiry, but something that comes up for me when I'm doing it is, you said before, it's very dynamic. It's about, we're talking as we're doing inquiry. And sometimes I get to a spot where things get very quiet, and it's a very good space. And it can stay that way for a bit. And then at some point I feel like, you know, like the thoughts comes up, okay, you got to say something. It's like I kind of like, I feel like I have to perform or something. It kind of takes me away from where I'm at the moment.
Exactly. So that's very good to notice that, right? Very important to see that. It sounds like, so your inner critic kind of comes in a little bit there and starts taking you away from the experience.
Right.
And there is something interesting about how do you inquire into, say, a state of stillness, right? So you might be sitting there and you're saying, well, it feels still, feels nice, right? And inquiry, what's true is that inquiry is not just hanging out there being still and nice, right? So inquiry does still involve an exploration. But what you can do is you can sit there and you can go, okay, I feel still, I feel nice. Like, well, like what kind of nice, right? What's nice about this? What do I like about it? Or you might wonder, like, like what's the texture of it? Does it feel smooth, or does it feel open? Right? As I'm sitting here sensing the stillness, does it feel like some kind of presence, right? Or does it feel like an open emptiness, right? Or does it feel dark, or does it feel like light, right? Kind of clear. So there are so many things in that experience where, okay, there's no noise, it's quiet, it's still, it's nice, right? You could ask things like, well, I wonder how do I sense it in my body, right? How is this affecting my body right now? Yeah.
And it's important to verbalize those questions.
So all I'm saying, it's not that you have to, I mean, yeah, in a way, but what you are doing is that experience that's there, I mean, you might slow right down and just be with it and feeling it and exploring it, but you're continuing to explore. That's the point.
Okay.
It's not like I got still and quiet and that's it. It's kind of over. I'm just going to stay there in that, right? You can, even in an experience that is of complete silence, right? You can still articulate it. You might find, oh, as I stay with it, the silence just seems to get deeper and vaster, right? That's all I'm saying. You just keep exploring. That makes sense?
As you're talking, I'm comparing like the difference then between being mindful of what's going on and exploring what's going on. And I guess that's, sometimes it feels like there's a fine line there, just witnessing and also actively, I'll say, getting involved in it. So that's something I need to look at. Like that's something else that can be explored, is the difference between the two. Okay.
Beautiful. But what you're pointing to there, that difference between just witnessing and then actually exploring, that is the difference between meditation and inquiry, right? That's it. Kind of hitting the nail on the head of what is the differentiation between the practices.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the question. Right. Nisha. Hi, Nisha. You're still on mute there.
Oh, hi, Dong. So nice seeing you after some time.
Yeah, you too.
It was really miracle in my inquiry. My first minute of meditation I started with having a lot of pain in my, it is a toothache. So I was keep going doing the toothache, and then I was like I was sitting in the ocean and looking, and all the thought kept coming, keep going back to my toothache, and more thoughts kept coming. So my 5 minutes were gone. And of course, I kept coming back to my body, sensing my body in between, like feeling the consciousness. That part, of course, I liked it very much, having pain and everything, and still keep coming back to my body. So then 5 minutes of the inquiry. And in my inquiry, I said, look, I got really a lot of pain. And then I go through the pain of my toothache. And then he said, oh, now my pain is going all the way to my neck and upper neck and my chest. And I was really crying that, oh, I got so much pain. And just mainly I was talking about my pain. And of course, I talk about my meditation. And then the person, my partner, just said at the end when I finished, he said, it seems like, he said very lovingly, kindly, saying that, oh, Nisha, you are in such a pain. And that word, and then he said, I will time, because first I was timing our meditation and everything, but later on, he said, I will time. So I said, okay, please do. And then the meditation gone so quiet. And there was no pain at all.
Isn't that interesting?
The pain is gone completely. And at lasted 5 minutes, I had a really very quiet meditation without my toothache. So thank you.
Not bad.
And
Well,
thank you to my inquiry partner. Loving kindness, he said.
Yes.
So it's like mother is saying, yes, you are in such a pain, aren't you?
Yes.
That is really affected me.
Yes.
And I don't have any pain now. So thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it really does. It's such a beautiful sort of illustration. Because, of course, a lot of the time in our meditation, like you say, if we have got pain, part of what's going on in our inner world is like reacting to the pain, right? We wish it wasn't there, or it's there, but so there's a whole movement with it. Or people have it like with their thoughts. Their mind is very busy and they're like, oh, I wish my mind wasn't so busy. And you sit there, you're like basically in an argument with your mind. And then if you take the inquiry and you take the time just to explore it, like, oh, well, what is this busy mind? Or what is this pain? Just like you did so beautifully there. And then really it allows something completely else to happen. It really does. It's quite remarkable. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Not, by the way, that I want to say every time you're going to inquire into something, it's going to disappear. It's not the point. But it just points to the kind of dynamism that can happen, the kind of change. Susan.
Thank you, Dom. That was a wonderful experience. I have a couple of questions. When you say mindfulness, is that the same as being present? Is that the same as awareness?
This is a super question. Yeah. So kind of strictly speaking, I think of mindfulness and awareness as more or less kind of interchangeable, right? So mindfulness and awareness, mindfulness is being really just is the awareness of what's going on. And certainly in the diamond approach, we use presence to convey something, in addition to mindfulness, or awareness, which is a very fundamental property of consciousness. Presence also has immediacy and substantiality, right? So when we're really present there, or even more when we're sensing presence, right, we're feeling our consciousness as a substantiality of consciousness, right? That is different than just pure awareness, right? So they're related, but they're not exactly the same.
Thank you. one of the problems that I have when meditating and when doing awareness is this monkey mind that I've found out likes to plan the future. And so when I'm meditating, I have to constantly let go of that. Right. And I found when I was doing my mindfulness here that I was having to do the same thing, because the mind just wants to take over, excuse me, from this awareness experience.
Yep.
And so should I be doing the same thing I do in meditation and just let it go?
In meditation, when you're doing your meditation, that's what you do, right? That's when you're just being aware of it, right? You're just aware of it, you're aware of it, it's there.
Right.
But the thing I want to point you to, the interesting possibility is what happens in your inquiry if you kind of go, oh, there's this monkey mind. Hi, monkey mind. Hello. Come and tell me all about yourself. What are you planning? What are you interested in? What are you doing? Right? And you sit down and have a little get to know your monkey mind. Have you tried that?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I don't do this future planning when I'm doing inquiry. I'm much more focused.
Okay. But did you inquire into the planning?
No.
And into the part of you that plans? Right?
No. That's a good suggestion.
That's a wonderful idea, right? So your mindfulness practice has made you aware of this part of you. It's brought this little fish of this planning kind of thing has come into your awareness, and now you get to inquire into it, right? And there's so much you can find out about it. What's it planning about? How is it feeling? What's it like to be that planner? How do you sense your body when you're really in touch with it? There's so much you can find out there about where it's coming from within you. Right? So
thank you so much. I'll be back.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you discover. Great. Thanks, Susan. And Ellen.
Hi, Dominic.
Hey, Ellen.
I guess I've got some kind of, I'm noticing a bit of wanting to challenge maybe this, so I hope that's okay.
Bring it on. Yes, let's hear.
It's kind of the way that I understand things. And I guess one of the things is that I've noticed is sometimes the way therapy is talked about in the Diamond approach. Because my experience of being a therapist is that, you know, inquiry can just arise in therapy.
Yes.
It's not always like that, but if you're a body-oriented therapist, sometimes you find yourself in the space of someone just doing it.
Yes.
That's one thing. The other is my mind wrestling with what you've been talking about with mindfulness and inquiry, and noticing a part of myself, again, questioning the definition of mindfulness within the way Hamid writes about it. And then also, as you talk about it, recognizing that it's fine. There's no real problem apart from kind of defining things in a kind of very separate way. When
what's the piece that troubles you sort of in the definition, or what's that?
I think it's the kind of conceptualness of mindfulness, you know, because if you're doing inquiry and you're feeling, then you're doing mindfulness. So sometimes when mindfulness is conveyed as this kind of passive state, I guess I'm guessing quite a lot of people who are very into mindfulness might disagree with that.
Yeah. So I think yes, I think you're right. And in both of the things. So in both ways, I was maybe a little simplistic, right? And so start with the therapy thing. I mean, it is true that there are therapeutic modalities that include some of what we would call inquiry, right? I don't think the fullness of the practice as we engage it in the Diamond approach is what happened. Well, it's not what most therapies involve, right? So that's my observation, right? And as you say, I think oftentimes it can happen, it may arise sometimes almost by chance or by accident, and sometimes without really fully recognizing the significance of it and the difference between that and other sort of forms of exploration. But for sure, I don't want to say like the exploration and articulation of immediate experience is completely unique to the diamond approach. I don't want to claim that. It's just not true, right? And in terms of the mindfulness, as I was saying with one of the earlier questions, so it's not that it's just a totally passive letting go of, right? But there is something about, you know, you're present with, you can be there, you're encouraged to be curious and open and in touch. And then what I see is that many different then there arise many different mindfulness practices. Like they'll say, well, here's one like with your body. And it's actually a different thing. It's like more body scanning, or here's one more about inner critic. And oh, that's actually kind of going a little bit into inquiry. So it's not a clearly defined pure awareness practice, right? Whereas here I was, like I said at the beginning, I was focusing more specifically on the pure mindfulness awareness practice itself. But oftentimes these other things go into compassion meditation or other kinds of practices that bring in other elements, right? And, you know, like you said, it's all being with your experience. And I think you're always invited to be curious and open and, you know, with whatever it is that's coming. So I'm agreeing with you. I think you're right.
Thank you.
And as I said, just to reiterate, I am not a mindfulness teacher in the way that mindfulness is understood and used as a particular school of thing.
Yeah,
right.
Thank you for saying it. It's good to hear it. And I've got other questions I want to ask because I know there's other people and they might be
through. Send them through. Love to hear them. So we are coming to time here. Maybe we'll take one or two. Sue, you had your hand up for a while. Do you want to have a quick question?
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Just to say that I'm interested in the skill or the qualities of the witness. So in inquiry, there's quite a lot of skill we can learn. And in witnessing, and what I realized was in the meditation, the first one, I could witness my consciousness as well as things in my body. Like it's quite a range of things, and I felt I could be a witness. Then in the exercise, I was reacting to the word mindfulness, meditation, all the associations. Every teacher that ever taught me about that came in, and so it was busy. And then I thought, where's my consciousness gone? like that wide angle lens. Yes. So I zoomed out, and that helped to create some space to then be able to just allow everything. And I just wondered, because I know in Ridwan they say, go to the kath, go down, and I find that sort of narrows it, and then it's quite hard to have that like just witnessing, which is quite a neutral position. Yes.
And in a way, you see, it's an interesting thing with kath meditation practice. So with the kath, again, the instructions, I don't know about go to the kath and go down. It's like you let everything be as it is, and you have your attention on your kath, right? So you're including your belly with whatever else is going on. But it's not that you have to stop anything else from going on, right? So it's quite possible to be sensing your kath and have quite a wide open lens, right? But your kath is still the main place you're putting your attention. I'll also say that and it's relevant to where you and your group are now, at some point the meditation practice changes, right? So we don't do kath meditation forever.
Right. But I just think that like the witness, I got a real distinction tonight. The witness,
very good.
It's not rejecting your experience, and it's not inquiring into it. It's quite, but you have to be quite neutral and open.
Yes.
But how do you foster that openness?
Beautiful.
It depends who's witnessing, right?
All good. So what I appreciate that you're doing now is inquiring into the witness.
Yes. Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah. Thanks, Sue. Thanks. I think we are going to have to stop here. So, Andisa, I see you have your hand up, but I think we've gone a couple of minutes over. So we'll be talking soon, and we can discuss your question then as well. So time to finish off. Couple of quick points as we finish. I think we have a date for our next meeting. Susan will probably pop it into the chat soon. So it is sometime in February.
It's there. I'll pop it in again.
Oh, it's kind of further up. Okay, great. So it's in there, but Susan's going to pop it in again. February the 15th, same Zoom link. Please feel free to invite anyone who you think might be interested. If you have topics that you'd be interested to hear about or questions, especially coming out of this mindfulness one, feel free to ping them through. If you didn't get to your questions, because, you know, we might do another one on mindfulness and we can go deeper into it. And I'd love to, you know, hear your questions and your comments. And then we are beginning in late February. We're running again the first dive-in inquiry course. So that's the first course, which is the introduction to inquiry. We call it mindful inquiry, right? Because it's inquiry that is based in the immediacy of our experience, brings this capacity of mindfulness, and then we explore and inquire into what's there. So you can find out the details of that on the Dive-In website. And it's a great sort of really simple, practical introduction to the practice of inquiry. So that kind of brings us to our time. Thank you very much for coming along. It's been great spending this hour and a half with you, and hope you found something useful for your practice. And I wish you well diving in and exploring over the next month, and perhaps we'll see you next time. Have a good night, good day, and thank you for coming along. Yeah, bye now.
Thank you.
Say goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dom. Bye.
Welcome.
Dankeschön.